The plates clattered onto the kitchen table with a little more force than usual. John didn't even look up from his phone, just gave a mumbled, "Thanks, hun." I wanted to scream that I hadn't cooked frozen lasagna for him to stare at some stupid screen. But then again, what was the point? Seemed like the only time he really noticed me was if dinner was late or his favorite shirt wasn't ironed. The next day, I caught myself staring out the office window way too long. When I finally snapped out of it, a sticky note on my desk made me jump. Just a smiley face and, "Nice presentation today," scrawled across it. I didn't even know who left it. Probably meant for someone else, but it made me flush a little. I hadn't felt like anyone noticed me in ages. Days melted into weeks. He was there, in the hallway, at the coffee machine. Always a smile, quick to ask how my day was. Ben, they called him. His flirting wasn't sleazy, it was playful, flattering. My cheeks burned a lot those weeks, and it wasn't just the extra coffee. He asked me to help with a project, something about staying late. My heart pounded in my throat as I muttered an excuse about needing to get home. Then he said the stupidest, most thrilling thing. "Maybe we could grab dinner first, work through it over food?" My traitorous mouth just said, "Okay," without even asking my brain. The little Thai place down the street was nothing fancy, but his arm brushed mine as we looked at the menu, and I swear, electricity zapped through me. Didn't even care that work talk turned into talking about old movies and embarrassing childhood stories. It was like, finally, someone saw me. Really saw me, not just the wife-shaped thing who did laundry and packed lunches. "It's so late," I gasped when I checked my watch, the lie slipping out easy. "John expects me home." Ben just grinned, paid the bill, and then, oh God, walked me to my car. Leaned in like he might kiss me, then just whispered, "Tomorrow?" I nodded like an idiot. And that was it, the moment everything started to slide off a cliff. The next morning, that feeling, the giddy, squirmy one, was back. I practically floated through the office, smiling too much at everyone. Even Janet, who always smells like cat food, got a "good morning" from me. John never noticed a thing when I put effort into my clothes, but I bet Ben would. Stupid, shallow thought, but there it was. Lunchtime was agony. I kept replaying the night before in my head, the way Ben laughed at my dumb jokes, like I was actually funny. The split second where his hand lingered over mine when he passed me the hot sauce. The drive home, the guilt crushing me, the thrill fighting back just as hard. I'd barely managed to choke down a sandwich, the whole thing feeling like a waste of time when I could have been with him. That night, I lingered over getting ready. A little more eyeliner, lipstick instead of just gloss. John grunted something about needing the bathroom, and guilt washed over me again. But as I twisted my hair up, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. There was a spark in my eyes I hadn't seen in ages. I didn't feel like tired old me. I felt like, well, not a schoolgirl, but not a washed-up housewife either. The days blurred together. Ben and I were caught in this stupid dance. Lunch dates disguised as work meetings. Staying late for projects that never seemed to get done. My head ached from lying, my heart hammered every time he was near. Sleep was a joke. I'd toss and turn. John snoring beside me, images of Ben flashing through my head. It was exhausting, this double life I was leading. The changes weren't just about how I looked. I was bolder. Snapped back at John when he made one of his snide little comments. Took charge of a project at work when I usually just hung back. It was like all the pieces of me that had been squashed flat were unfolding. Scary, messy, but somehow, good. Well, good and terrible all at once. And even with the sleepless nights and the constant fear of getting caught, I couldn't imagine stopping. Not yet. The lies got easier to tell. Ben and I were so in sync now, a look, a half-finished sentence, and we'd come up with some believable tale. Late reports, surprise client dinners. It was almost a game, seeing how much we could get away with. John was none the wiser, the big lug. He thought I was just being extra dedicated to my job. Moron. The thing is, I did feel different. Like, not just about Ben. It was confidence, I guess. Knowing I had this secret, that I was desirable, it bled into everything else. Stupid, I know, but those moments with Ben, they made me feel alive in a way I hadn't in forever. Was it worth risking it all? Probably not, but I kept telling myself it was temporary. Just a little boost and then I'd go back to my life like normal. It was like I was two people. The loyal wife at home, and this other woman, bolder and brighter, when I was with him. Deleting text threads felt scummy. But even worse was this jittery feeling I had all the time, jumping every time my phone buzzed, making triple sure to clear my browser history on the shared computer. The sneaking around was getting old fast. One night, John looked up from his stupid sports game and actually asked me, "You okay? You seem distracted." Heart pounding. I just shrugged it off. Big project at work, stress. Not a total lie, but not the half of it either. Then it happened. We were getting drinks after a late meeting, and Ben brushed his leg against mine under the table. Nothing major, but I swear time froze. It was like this invisible bubble around us, and then his hand closed over mine for a fleeting second. The thrill of it was terrifying. And it was the moment I realized, this wasn't just flirting anymore. This, whatever it was headed somewhere real bad. A part of me wanted to pull away, make up some excuse and leave. But a bigger part of me, a part one barely recognized anymore, didn't. That night, lying in bed next to John, his soft snoring filling the room, I stared at the ceiling. It wasn't just Ben that excited me, though Lord knows that was part of it. It was the feeling of danger, of playing with fire. The thrill of knowing that one wrong move and my carefully ordered little life would explode into a million pieces. And some sick, twisted part of me craved the destruction, longed to watch it all burn. Ben booked us this fancy hotel room overlooking the city for a strategic planning session. It was ridiculous. We could have done it in a broom closet for all the actual work that got done. The second we walked into that room, it was like something flipped inside me. The rush of it, being someplace we absolutely shouldn't be, the bed right there, that whole minibar full of expensive champagne that was practically screaming at us. It wasn't just the fancy setting, it was the feeling that all the rules were suspended, that I could shed that good wife persona and let this other, wilder woman take over. The energy was barely contained, crackling in the air between us. We didn't even talk. He just started kissing me, fierce and hungry like I'd never been kissed before. My body was practically buzzing, and the guilt gnawing at the edges of my mind was drowned out by pure, reckless abandon. In that moment, there wasn't John or my job or responsibilities. Just Ben, his hands on me, his mouth whispering all those things I'd only imagined. I craved him, the way every touch sent electricity through me, the way he looked at me like I was the only woman in the world. When it was over, I couldn't even bring myself to feel bad. Instead, there was this buzzing energy coursing through me, a sense that my life had just taken a dramatic, reckless turn. The next morning felt surreal. Driving home in my sensible skirt and blouse, part of me felt like I'd gotten away with the crime of the century. I wanted to shout it from the overpass. I'm having an affair, and it's glorious. And a sick, small part of me wanted to be caught, for it all to come crashing down around me. This desire, this longing for the disaster, it both scared and exhilarated me. Like I was playing chicken with my life, seeing how far I could push it before it all shattered. Maybe, subconsciously, I craved the fallout, a chance to break free, to burn the perfect little life I'd built to the ground. The lies were a constant thrum now. It wasn't just John, it was our friends, my coworkers. Everyone I saw, I felt like they could see the secret stamped across my forehead. Each encounter felt tainted, like I was a fraud. I started overcompensating, being overly affectionate with John, baking cookies for the neighbors like some 1950s housewife caricature brought to life. The more I tried to cover my tracks, the more obvious it became that something was deeply wrong. Ben and I weren't meeting just for lunch anymore. Weekends away turned into the occasional overnight trip, hidden in layers of fake invoices and carefully timed cover stories. It was exhausting, the constant hum of fear beneath everything, like I was walking a tightrope I knew was going to snap sooner or later. We were spiraling. The secrecy wasn't just a logistical challenge, it was fuel to our fire. There was a thrill in knowing every glance, every stolen touch, was a defiance of all the rules we'd once lived by. But as the lies got bolder, so did we. That first cautious touch under the table? It turned into lingering hand-holds during business lunches, stolen kisses in the deserted stairwell, nights in hotel rooms getting drunker and bolder with every stolen hour. Every risk, every forbidden moment, made the desire burn hotter. I didn't know if it was love, or lust, or something else entirely. All I knew was that I craved him with a desperation that terrified me. We couldn't seem to stop, even though my head kept screaming that it was only a matter of time before this bomb we'd built exploded, taking both our lives down with it. John was starting to get suspicious. It was in the little things. The way he looked at me a little too long, the casual question about my whereabouts that seemed a bit too pointed. I kept telling myself I was imagining it, but the fear nibbled at the edge of my mind constantly. Was it a forgotten lipstick smudge? That lingering smell of Ben's cologne after a late meeting? Or maybe some deep down part of him just knew I wasn't the same person I used to be. Every time the phone rang, my heart leapt into my throat. Was it Ben? A friend who knew my secret? Or worse, John confronting me with evidence I couldn't deny? One night, after another late work dinner that was really a night in some dingy motel room with Ben, I woke up screaming from a nightmare. I couldn't remember the specifics, just the overwhelming sense of being caught, of my whole world crashing down around me. John just rubbed my back sleepily, mumbling, "Bad dream, honey?" I just nodded, trying to regulate my breathing, wondering if the dreams were a warning. The guilt twisted inside me like a rusty knife. I'd justify it away, telling myself I deserved this happiness, that John had taken me for granted for years. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. When John smiled, that goofy, crooked smile I used to find endearing, I felt nothing but a stab of shame. The guilt wasn't just for John, it was for the person I'd become. The liar, the cheat. I didn't even recognize myself sometimes. I couldn't take my eyes off my phone. Each notification, a potential landmine. Was that Ben? Had he slipped up? Did John intercept something he shouldn't have? Every ringtone made me jump, and I started inventing elaborate excuses to disappear if my phone buzzed around John. It felt like I was living two lives. One a desperate juggling act of lies, the other a terrifying descent into a hell of my own making. Late one night, John's phone buzzed on the bedside table. He was already asleep, snoring softly. Curiosity, that dangerous, destructive kind, took over. I picked it up, heart pounding. The screen was unlocked. A single text from Sarah, a friend of ours. "Coffee tomorrow? Haven't seen you in forever." Innocuous, completely normal. Yet I stood there paralyzed, fear washing over me in waves. It was ridiculous. I knew I'd find nothing. But if I searched, would I be able to stop? Did I want to know? If I found proof, could I face the consequences? I dropped the phone like it was burning me. My head pounded, the room tilting crazily. The guilt threatened to drown me, the fear of vice closing around my chest. This, I realized, was the real hell. Not the act of cheating itself, but the constant dread, the knowledge that the whole house of cards I'd built could come crashing down any second. It wasn't a matter of if, but when. I started snapping at John over the dumbest things, leaving his socks on the floor, forgetting to buy milk, breathing too loudly. It was horrible, but it became this awful, twisted justification. See, I told myself, he's neglectful, he doesn't care enough. That made it easier to slip away for an hour. A lunch date with Ben that stretched into a whole afternoon tangled in the cheap sheets of another motel room. The close calls started happening more frequently. Once, John almost came home early and I barely had time to shove Ben's clothes into a drawer and fling myself into the shower, smelling like his cologne and cheap motel soap. Another time, he found a receipt crumpled in my jacket pocket. "Fancy dinner?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. I stammered something about a client meeting running late, but I could see the doubt flickering in his eyes. We were unraveling, and it was my fault. I tried to care about John, I really did. I'd force myself to cook him dinner, try to listen as he ranted about his awful boss, but it was impossible. When he touched me, my skin crawled. The guilt was suffocating, yet I couldn't make myself stop. Seeing Ben, feeling his hands on me, that was my lifeline, the only thing keeping me from drowning in this pit of lies I dug for myself. One Saturday morning, I deliberately picked a fight with John. Something about him leaving the lawnmower out, I can't even remember. It was petty, but it flared into this whole argument, and I stormed out the door, slamming it behind me. I didn't even hesitate. I dialed Ben, my voice shaking. "Can we meet? My place, now." John's confused face flashed into my mind as I sped towards home, a mix of fear and reckless determination coursing through me. It felt like a dam breaking inside. I didn't care about being subtle anymore. didn't care about anything except the thrill and terror of finally throwing caution to the wind. The affair had been about stolen moments, about secrets hidden in code words and lies disguised as business trips. But bringing Ben into my home, the place I built with John, that was a whole new level of betrayal. My hands were trembling as I unlocked the door, half expecting to find John there waiting, but the house was empty. A sick relief twisted through me as I dialed Ben again. Each ring felt like a hammer blow. Ben and we'd crossed a line, and there was no going back. As I heard his, "Hello?" on the other end, part of me wanted to hang up, to rewind, to fix it all. But the other part, the reckless part that was getting louder with each passing day, didn't let me. It was too late. We were both too far gone. The days blurred into a haze of stolen moments with Ben and tense, guilt-ridden nights at home. I was a walking contradiction, laughing one minute, snapping the next for no real reason. John looked at me with this sad, confused expression, like he was trying to find the woman he married amidst this angry, jittery stranger. I hated what I was doing to him and hated myself more. But stopping felt impossible. Ben started getting demanding. He wasn't content with hurried hotel rooms or whispering sweet nothings into my voicemail anymore. "Why can't we just be together?" he'd whine. "When are you going to leave him? I can't do this sneaking around thing anymore." The pressure was suffocating. I knew he was right, knew this fantasy couldn't last forever. But the idea of dismantling my life, hurting John, facing my friends and family, all the messy, ugly parts that came with blowing everything up, it paralyzed me. I lashed out, started picking fights with Ben. The thrill of danger had soured, turning into a constant, grinding anxiety instead. One night after a particularly bad argument, I drove around the city for hours, my mind a tangled mess of desperation and self-loathing. I finally pulled over at a dingy roadside bar, somewhere I'd never been before, somewhere no one would recognize me. I ended up drinking way too many tequila shots with the gruff bartender, pouring out my pathetic story to a man who probably heard variations of it 10 times a week. "Leave him," he grunted matter-of-factly, like it was as easy as ordering another round. I wanted to scream at him that it wasn't that simple, but he was right. I was clinging to two versions of a life that were never meant to coexist. I stumbled out into the parking lot long past midnight, my head buzzing. As I fumbled for my keys, a terrifying sense of clarity washed over me. It wasn't a grand revelation, just a simple fact: this was unsustainable. Everything inside me was fracturing from the strain. The dam I'd been holding together with trembling fingers was about to burst, and when it did, the wreckage wouldn't just consume me, it would drown the people I loved as well. The question wasn't if it would end, but how. Ben? Me? John? Would one of us make a desperate move, or would the truth just come spilling out, a messy, uncontrollable flood that would destroy everything in its path? I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to push the image away, but it was too late. Fear and exhaustion rolled over me in waves, and I knew, with a bone-deep certainty, that I couldn't keep on like this. I woke up the next morning with a pounding head and the sickening knowledge that I'd hit my breaking point. Sneaking into my own house before dawn, I could hear John's soft snores from the bedroom. It was the last straw. He deserved better. Hell, I deserved better than this pathetic mess I'd created. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, images of John's hurt face flashed across my mind. There was no more hiding. I had to tell him, rip the bandage off and deal with the fallout, no matter how ugly it got. But dread settled over me like a suffocating blanket. How do you start a conversation like that? I paced the kitchen, running through a million different versions in my head. There was no good way to do this, no way to erase the pain I was about to cause. My eyes fell on a photo of us on our wedding day, smiles so bright they seemed impossible now. A sob caught in my throat. He never saw this coming, never thought his wife was capable of this level of betrayal. I was a walking disaster, a grenade of guilt and destruction, and John was about to get caught in the blast zone. My hands trembled as I reached for the phone. I had to talk to Ben first, warn him the game was over. When he answered, voice blurred with sleep, I took a deep breath. "It's over. I'm telling John everything." Silence crackled on the line. Then, "Are you serious? You're kidding, right?" Panic started to twist in my stomach. What if he wasn't going to let this go easily? What if he tried to convince me otherwise, or worse, tried to blackmail me? "I'm deadly serious," I snapped, voice shaking but resolute. This has gone too far. It's done. There was another pause, then a choked, fine, followed by the click of him hanging up. My legs gave out, and I sank onto a kitchen chair, the phone still clutched in my sweaty hand. It was a small victory, but I was starting a war, and I didn't know if I was strong enough to survive it. I must have lost track of time, staring at the clock, each tick mocking me, delaying the inevitable. When John finally emerged from the bedroom, blinking against the morning light, the guilt crushed me. He looked so trusting, so utterly unaware of the bomb I was about to detonate in his life. My throat constricted. I needed to say it, get it over with, but the words felt like lead weights on my tongue. John, I choked out, we need